I think from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges is sort of advancing their technology. So when a company wants to perform digital transformation, usually that involves legacy systems or technical debt with their software and things like that. And so they have to sort of step back and look at their organization. And with a lot of these organizations, they're huge. So that could take years just to understand what does digital transformation look like. It could take 5 years for some companies. They've got to understand where they are and where they want to go and what steps they need to take in between. And that's incredibly difficult because they've got to understand very precisely the different products and the different systems that make up those products. What state are they in? Are they old? Are they, what's it going to take to sort of bring them up to speed? And data science has been a big piece of digital transformation and is like throwing a wrench into the puzzle. It just causes all sorts of issues because the demand of data science is it sort of has the promise of doing all these amazing things. And it's hard to sort of define what that is, mainly because of what data science is. It's sort of machine learning against data, and it's hard to understand what that means and what value that's going to drive for the business. But also, how does the company support that? Traditionally, data science is give me all the data and I'll tell you things about the data. But the whole give me all the data is incredibly difficult. Can be in the wrong format. It can be difficult to access. It could be a production system where you don't want to affect it by pulling data out of it. And so you've got to set up these systems to even be able to do that. So these are some of the minutia of sort of doing that and understanding an existing system. I know Deon has a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really daunting for companies, and it all depends on where the push to digital transformation comes from. If it comes from the top, you might say, okay, well, do they really understand what it means? Because it sounds simple enough. It's just transform, but the deeper you delve into these complicated systems, the more you find out how complicated it is, like you said, Josh. There are also the problem of systems not being designed in the first place to communicate with other systems. There's no easy way to extract or transform, or so there's a cost involved, an astronomical cost sometimes to re-engineer those systems, or the inevitable black box sitting under somebody's desk on the third floor that nobody knows what it does, except we should never ever touch it. And that runs some very, very useful piece of software. So I think companies fail because they underestimate the scale of the transformation. So by breaking it down into why we're doing this, if it is to power some decision making on big data, great. What do we need? It could be as simple as moving some paper processes to digital processes, right? And it can be as advanced as creating mega data lakes. But it's important to then consult and make sure that you understand the problem before just jumping on the bandwagon.
hmm And you may look at too, like so, imagine a corporation that has, six different systems or something like that, and you've got X number of engineers that have been working on these systems for, 5, 10 years. And now you want to transform those systems in some way. And
Mm.
that maybe some transformations are small and some are huge, but it's really difficult to get that existing team. Like they only have so much capacity. And so if they're supporting something that's in production and now you're asking them to sort of, you still have to maintain your system and then you've got to transform it into something else. That's basically like asking somebody to do two jobs. So you could hire more people and bring them in, but that now just sort of complicates things. You got more team members. They've got to learn how these systems work. And a lot of these systems have been sort of pieced together and added on for a
Right.
long time. And so they're very complicated at the end of the day.
We've also seen in our journey that sometimes these engineers or team leaders, they feel under threat. My system is changing. I'm losing control. I am less relevant, to a point where we've been obstructed in the past. not because of anything else, but some fear that the data in the system will make the system obsolete.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that management also makes it clear that why the transition is happening.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's a complicated issue because employees are involved at the end of the day, and there's no silver bullet there. It's like you got to handle almost case by case with employees. Bringing consultants is usually a huge sort of like everybody gets defensive. Some employees naturally have learned to sort of build moats around themselves.
Yeah,
So they don't really want anybody into their world. And it's just a fact that you have to deal with. So a lot of these things, you get the emotional, the bureaucratic, the political side of things that also have to be tackled. It's not just software at the end of the day. So
correct. Yeah, people. It's ultimately about people and people working together. Yeah, so I think we've spoken about the complexity, and the complexity obviously impacts cost. So we talk about a transformation project. I've heard of some really big transformation projects where the budgets just run away essentially. So again, back to your initial point, defining the scope, defining what is important today, tomorrow, next week, next year, is important to set good expectations with management and leadership so that they can provide that continued support. Without that support, the whole project is doomed to fail.
yeah, and ROI at the end of the day, I mean that the executives want to sort of understand what that is,
Yeah.
and with these transformations that's incredibly difficult. You may be able to tell them, hey, this is going to cost you $2 million, and it's sort of like, and you need to do it, so ROI doesn't really matter. It's like it has to be done, but at a certain point, if these overruns that Deon talked about, it's like, okay, well, now the timeline went from 3 years to 4 years, and that budget's now 2.5 million, and then now it changes again. It's like, well, now it's 3 million. At a certain point the plug is going to be pulled.
Right.
So that's part of the issue too, is like if you don't estimate correctly out of the gate, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because at the end of the day somebody is looking at those numbers with the ability to stop the flow of money, and that's going
Yeah.
to just kill the project. So
And also, if you had the wrong justification from the get go, so if you say it's going to cost you 3 million, but it's going to save you 2 million, or it's going to save you 4 million, that's an easy sum, right? Except you need to understand where those savings are coming from, right? Because if you don't make do on the savings, you've just spent 4 million to not gain anything. So back to the machine learning, the big data problem, which is where most people really want to get stuck into digital transformation, is how do you value that in a business? So again, coming from the top, if there's some push to say, what, this is going to make us competitive, this is going to give us a new product, or this is going to give us an edge, having that kind of drive is much different from saying, we're going to not use these 30 engineers or those 14 consultants.